interrupt anybody, so I hope I don't get interrupted because I have some fairly salient points to make. The ESRI yesterday issued a statement on Budget 23 on its distributional impact, saying that the people on the lowest income basically are being impacted more by these budgetary measures than those on the higher income. And they go on to say that property tax is a key driving factor in these results. For those with low incomes after housing costs, the emphasis is strongly on deferrals of property tax liability rather than income-related exemptions of relief. This means that the burden of the tax, deferred or otherwise, tends to be greatest for those on low incomes. Now, I'm sitting here listening and I'm wondering which suspended reality most of the other senators in this House are living in. I've been at numerous public meetings over the last week, and the big issue that has been coming up is that people are wondering where in the name of the God they're going to get the money to pay the property tax. But that really isn't the issue. It's actually where they're going to get the money to pay the mortgage after the property tax has been taken by the Revenue Commissioners, because there is no choice in this. That's where people are going to be hammered. It's trying to pay the other bills that they can't pay because Revenue will have taken the property tax out of whatever monies they have. It's an incredible situation we find ourselves in here today. At the height of an unprecedented and unyielding mortgage payment crisis, we're discussing adding another arbitrary tax onto these same people. Between July and September, 115 new families fell into mortgage distress every day. 23.5% of all residential mortgages are in distress. These are the same people that you want to pile a home tax on. This makes no sense, and the government needs to cop onto itself here. It's no wonder that the government wants to rush this through with as little debate as possible. Any proper debate and scrutiny of this tax would show how unfair and unrealistic it is. In the Dáil, you managed to discuss only one amendment before the debate was guillotined. That fact is testament of how deeply uncomfortable this tax is for government TDs and senators. There is, of course, still time for senators here to listen to their constituents and to apply some common sense and to reject this family home tax. And make no mistake that this is what this is, a family home tax. To call this a property tax is deeply and deliberately misleading. A genuine property tax would be a tax on properties including yachts, luxury cars and the like. This, on the other hand, is family home tax, pure and simple. In 1994, Enda Kennedy said, "It's morally wrong, unjust and unfair to tax a person's home." Only 2 years ago, Eamon Gilmore promised not to bring in a family home tax, saying, "We have to remember that many people have already paid a property tax on their residential home." He was referring to stamp duty. They were both dead right. Now they are in the wrong, and the haste with which they are pushing this through tells us that they know they are, but don't want to talk about it. The hypocrisy on this issue isn't limited to Fine Gael and Labour, of course. Fianna Fáil, party of the Troika, signed up lock, stock and barrel to a property tax in their surrender letter to the IMF. In their pre-budget submission last year, they were still pushing for a family home tax, but now they say it's the right tax at the wrong time.
Because they're not in government.
This is a worse time than last year for mortgage holders. When we look at this family home tax, we see how it falls on the question of fairness too. The government has chosen to ignore its own experts and include social housing in the legislation. Local authority housing and voluntary association housing is to be taxed too. These tenants will end up footing the bill here. And I do note the statements of Senator Hayden here, and I agree with a lot of what she had to say. But I do hope that she will stand up to her convictions on this issue, that if she doesn't see changes in this legislation or this legislation scrapped, that she will vote accordingly and that she'll whip up her Labour backbenchers to do the same thing. It's no point saying something in here and then voting with the cuts that you're opposing verbally and telling people in the media and in the public that you're against. There are also no exemptions for citizens on social welfare or living in poverty or with unsustainable debts. Those who can seek to have tax deferred will face a 4% interest penalty, and this option is only available for those of very low incomes. The government will tax people's home, and you will have to pay regardless of whether they can afford to pay or regardless of whether paying this tax is the difference between feeding and clothing children or not. In short, this is a deeply unfair and completely regressive tax. Any reference to rates in the 6 counties too are simply cheap shots and only show up the ignorance of some whose interest in the north of our country is purely opportunistic. Such claims are easily seen through by citizens north and south, because we know it's a totally different model. People pay rates under a totally different system in the north, and they do get services. They get water services, education services, school transport services, meals, health. We're being asked to pay a property tax to our local authorities. What are we getting for this property tax? We're also paying refuse charges. You're asking us to pay water charges on top of that. So start comparing like with like. If you're looking at the north, start making real comparisons and stop talking the claptrap that you've been talking. Claptrap to see for the last couple of weeks. What extra are we going to get for these extra charges?
Senator, you have 1 minute.
The worst aspect of this bill is that there is a clear alternative. A fair way for the state to raise revenue in a way that is sustainable and realistic.
Hear, hear.
My party has published a wealth tax bill that would tax those who can afford to pay. What's the objection to asking people with assets over $1 million to pay 1% wealth tax? Is this not a fairer way of raising revenue than going after the family home? Some of the most progressive and equal countries in Europe, including France, Sweden and Finland, operate a wealth tax, and it works. Unlike this proposed family home tax, a wealth tax would be easier to administer and could be collected with regard to people's ability to pay, unlike this family home tax. Be under no illusions. This is a family home tax and it should be opposed, and I hope you do oppose it for the mean market.